Catseye's Gap ad didn't just sell clothes, it sold a feeling. And the real reason it worked has nothing to do with denim. Before we talk about Katseye, we need to talk about Gap itself, because this isn't just a clothing brand. Gap is a name that once defined eras. In the 90s, Gap wasn't just selling khakis or denim, it was creating cultural shorthand. Their campaigns were events in themselves. Think about their ads from the 90s and early 2000s. Gap stripped away glamour and showed stars like Sarah Jessica Parker and Madonna in jeans and tees. The message was bold. Even the most famous faces looked their most iconic in basics. Or the khaki swing ad, a whirlwind of dancers in loose khakis shot against a white backdrop, turning an everyday item into a symbol of joy and movement. It wasn't fashion, it was freedom, choreographed into culture. Even the holiday campaigns became traditions. Singing, dancing, oversized scarves, the kind of ads you didn't skip, you anticipated. Gap wasn't just a brand, it was a cultural rhythm. But then came the decline. Fast fashion made Gap look overpriced. Luxury streetwear made it look bland. What was once essential became forgettable. Gap shifted from a tastemaker to a mall staple, the store you passed on your way to Zara or H&M. Now, with its new branding, collaborations, and campaigns, Gap is clawing its way back. It's not just fighting for sales, it's fighting for relevance. And the Katseye ad is the clearest signal yet. Gap doesn't just want to remind you it exists, it wants to remind you it can still set the cultural tone. The question is, did it succeed? When Gap dropped this campaign, it wasn't just a commercial break, it became a cultural checkpoint. Most ads are forgettable. A shot of denim, a catchy line, then gone. But every once in a while, a brand engineers something that lodges itself into the culture. Think Calvin Klein in the 80s with Brooke Shields, or Nike in the 90s, turning sneakers into social movements. These weren't commercials, they were cultural shorthand for identity. Katseye's Gap ad belongs to that lineage. But here's the hidden truth. Its success wasn't built on denim, it was built on 3 psychological triggers. First, nostalgia. Gap has always marketed itself as a piece of Americana. By featuring Katseye, fresh faces in a classic brand, it connected 2 eras. The old promise of Gap and the new mythology of Katseye collided, sparking a feeling of familiarity with a modern edge. Second, identity signaling. Fashion is never just clothing, it's a tribal marker. Wearing Gap in this context wasn't about fabric. It was saying, I'm part of the Katseye generation. I get it. I belong here. Third, collective belonging. The structure of the commercial wasn't individualistic. It wasn't about one celebrity shining alone. It showed togetherness, rhythm, unity, mirroring the psychology of fandom itself. It wasn't about a product, it was about joining a cultural family. Psychology was the blueprint, but the ad's execution was the delivery system, and every creative choice was calculated to hit the culture sweet spot. First, the cinematography. The camera never isolates one member for too long. Instead, it flows, tracking, panning, cutting, creating the illusion of a community in motion. Second, the music. Gap could have played it safe with a pop instrumental or even a Katseye song. Instead, they used Milkshake, a Y2K anthem that feels both timeless and modern, an emotional anchor and a callback to Gap's glory days. Third, the choreography. Notice how the group never poses stiffly. They move, they lean, they laugh. That looseness makes it feel like a party and the opposite of a corporate shoot, something viewers could imagine themselves in and want to be a part of. Compare that to recent denim ad flops like Sydney Sweeney's American Eagle Great Jeans campaign, which is more about exclusion than inclusion. Fourth, the editing. Quick cuts, flashes of denim, a pace that felt like TikTok but looked like cinema. It was fast enough for Gen Z attention spans, polished enough for cultural credibility. Together, these choices created more than an ad. They created a mood a moment that felt less like marketing and more like watching culture happen in real time. But here's the real question. Why Katseye? Why did this specific group feel like the cultural key that unlocked Gap's biggest ad in years? Because each member didn't just model denim, they embodied an archetype audiences could instantly recognize. Together, Katseye represented more than a group. They were avatars of identity. Each one gave fans a role to identify with while collectively embodying Gap's eternal promise. This isn't about denim, it's about belonging. But there's another layer that can't be ignored: representation. Katseye isn't just styled differently, they are different. This is a group that crosses borders, languages, and aesthetics. Each member represents not just an archetype, but a different kind of audience. That's the power of diversity done right. It doesn't feel forced, it feels like the world as it is. In an industry where fashion campaigns have often been criticized for sameness or for tokenism, Katseye stood out. Their presence made the ad feel global, inclusive, and forward-facing. For fans, this mattered. Viewers could see fragments of themselves reflected back, no matter where they came from. And for Gap, a brand that built its empire in America but lost its edge in a globalized world, casting Katseye wasn't just a style choice, it was a statement. We're not just selling denim in malls anymore, we're speaking the language of a global generation. The ad itself was powerful, but what happened after is what made it historic. Within hours, TikTok was flooded with clips. But these weren't brand rollouts. They were fan-made artifacts. The internet didn't just watch the ad, it absorbed it, remixed it, and amplified it into culture. And here's what set it apart. Other brands have tried this and failed. Balenciaga's shock campaigns alienated more than they invited. Abercrombie's nostalgia revival leaned too heavily on the past without the momentum of fresh cultural icons. Katseye's Gap spot cracked the code by balancing three forces at once: Gap's comforting nostalgia, Katseye's rising mythology, and TikTok-ready format fluency. That balance turned denim into raw cultural material, claimed, remixed, and spread until the ad wasn't just advertising anymore. It was an artifact. This wasn't just an ad, it was a glimpse into the future. So if a single denim ad can turn into a cultural movement, here's the question: what happens when the next brand figures out how to weaponize belonging at this scale? Because if Katseye and Gap just cracked the code, then the future of advertising isn't about selling, it's about rewriting culture in real time. The only question left is who's going to do it next.